You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in David W. Craig, managing partner at Craig, Kelley Faultless, LLC, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. David is a nationally recognized trucking accident attorney with more than 35 years of experience litigating catastrophic injury and wrongful death cases. Named a trucking top 10 and top 100 trial lawyer by the National Trial Lawyers. David has received the Thurgood Marshall Fighting for Justice Award from the Association of Plaintiff Interstate Trucking Lawyers of America. He hosts a podcast, After the Crash, and is the author of Semi-Truck Wreck and an author of a new book, It's Never Been Easier to Hire the Wrong Attorney. That sounds very interesting. I'm very excited to discuss it with you, David. Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast.
Thanks, Benny. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Yeah, for sure. So since it is Lawyer Stories, before we get into about the book and all that, I'm very curious. You've had a long, nice, successful, and substantial career. Start us off with your background, like where you grew up and like what first inspired you to pursue law.
Sure. So I grew up in Indiana. Is where my office is headquartered. Was born in Richmond, and my dad was. It was interesting. My mom was 17 years old when she had me.
Okay.
So she was a kid, and my dad had just got out of the Marines, was going to go to college. So he was the first person in his family to go to college. So they grew. It was a really poor family, poor background. A lot of factory workers and farmers and people that worked with their hands.
Yep.
And my dad decided to go to college. He was going to be a psychologist. And so as a kid, I can remember my mom and dad dropping him off at Hurlem University, or my mom dropping him off and waiting in the car and watching him go through to get his doctor's degree. And while he was going to college, he worked for the welfare department.
Okay.
And the cool thing is that my dad really cared about people. That's why he wanted to be a psychologist.
Okay.
And he worked really hard at taking care of people. And so I just grew up with that mentality. My great-grandmother owned a grocery store. She sold groceries on credit. So I was just used to people taking care of each other, treating each other right. And, I can remember once with my dad, there's a guy that lived under a bridge, and he wouldn't come out. And he was homeless. And my dad was sent down to go get him because he had talked to my dad a couple of times. My dad's like, Dave, why don't you come with me? And I'm just a little kid, second grade. Yeah, second grade. I'm going, my mom's going, no, you can't take, And so my dad's like, no, he can go with me. So he takes me down underneath this bridge where these homeless folks are. And this guy, I remember I can visualize, I'm a second grade kid, and this guy gives me a baseball. I mean, this guy doesn't have a pot to piss in.
Yeah.
And he gives me something, though, that was really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And I learned that, this guy is a human being just like everybody else. He was a good person. He had his problems, obviously. And my dad was able to talk him out and coming out and getting help. And I just, so I just kind of grew up with that mentality that, you got to make a difference. And so I always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. When I was young, I thought I would be in politics.
Okay.
I thought I would get in politics. And then I got in politics and I found out, oh man, I really wasn't going to be able to make a difference because I wasn't rich. People I was around, like, unless you had a lot of money, people were telling you what to do. And so I decided that I would go become a lawyer. And I felt like I could make a difference to more people as a lawyer than I could a politician. So that's
maybe even like a psychologist, like your dad was. Like that was
the psychology. And I thought when I went to college, I took psychology classes. I did terrible in them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I guess I won't be a psychologist.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. So you just said, I want to go to law school because that's where I can make the biggest impact, basically.
Yeah, and I had an interest, and a lot of the politicians were lawyers that I knew, and so I thought, we'll go that route, and I'm really grateful that I did.
So what was the law school experience like? I mean, I think you were there in Indiana, and like did you know from the beginning you wanted to be a trial lawyer? Were there any challenges or like what really inspired you? I know that's a loaded question, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I really I like the social aspect of law school, but I really
yep.
just I wasn't great at law school. I went in the first semester, studied as hard as I could. I mean, everybody in law school is pretty smart. I mean, they got decent grades in undergrad, so I came
Yep.
in and I got 1A out of the first semester and realized, man, I'm not at these. These guys are a lot smarter. These ladies and men are a hell of a lot smarter than I am. So I better figure out a different plan. And so I started working my second semester of law school for who I thought people told me he was like one of the best attorneys in the state, one of the best trial lawyers. And so
Okay.
I went out and I think I was making $4.50 an hour or something like that
Wow.
because I wanted to just work for this guy. And he was a phenomenal lawyer. He was a criminal defense lawyer and he was a phenomenal trial lawyer. And so, I started working right out my second semester of law school because I realized, okay, if I'm not going to get top grades, then what's my next plan? My next
Right.
plan is let's go learn and get as much experience as I can. And so I worked for a lot of great trial lawyers while I was going through law school, and I got to actually participate, see them, watch them,
Right.
learn from them. And so that was, and I think that's, what really drove me towards trial work was because I saw these people, I really respected what they were doing, and thought, hey, this is what I would like to do.
Yeah, and you've seen a lot of lawyers, I'm sure, through the years, like a lot of first year lawyers and that sort of thing. What's some advice you'd give to a new lawyer going into a firm who wants to do trial practice?
Yeah, you know what's crazy to me is like so when I grew up, there wasn't all these conferences.
Right.
There wasn't all this stuff that you could go get easily accessible. There wasn't an internet. And so I was reading books. I mean, Melvin Belli and all these famous trial lawyers, Racehorse Haynes. And so I would read their books, and
Right.
they were more like just kind of storytelling books, not trial practice books. But it was just fascinating. You would learn from these books. But today, there's really no excuse not to learn. The problem I speak at law school occasionally. Last time I was down there, and usually it's trial practice. People who are interested in trial work,
It's
and I
great.
asked them, raise your hand. How many of you have been over to a trial? Hell, hardly any.
None of
I
them,
mean,
yeah.
you're within walking distance. Universities within walking
Wow.
distance, the Court of
Yeah.
Appeals and the
Right.
Supreme Court and a trial. How many of you have been over watching the Supreme Court? None. I mean, how many of you reading in your spare time? Well, none, because they're all, oh, we're so busy. Well,
Right.
okay, that's fine. But if you're going to be a great trial lawyer, you want to be a really good trial lawyer, then you better be investing the time and energy. And it's all there. It's on the internet. You can watch it. You can watch great trial lawyers. You can go to clubs. You can talk to lawyers. The good ones will always spend time with you
Yeah.
and talk with you. And so if I were trying to get, if I was a brand new law student or I was giving advice to them, I would be like, hey, first of all, you have the responsibility for your own success. Don't, you're not going to learn it in law school.
Right.
Most law schools aren't going to teach you how to be a great trial lawyer.
Yeah, I think that's good
So
advice.
study, read, learn, and watch.
Yeah.
Just hang out at the courthouse and watch, find out, go to the judges. Who's the best trial lawyer? Got any good trials coming up this month? And
Right.
go watch them.
That's good advice. So tell us, David, about like what drew you specifically to catastrophic injury and trucking litigation. I know that we spoke on trying to make the biggest impact, trying to really help people. That's how you grew up, like watching your father. So what drew you specifically to that area?
When I was early in my career, so I've been doing it now 40 years. Early in
Wow.
my career, I was working for a lawyer. They needed a trial lawyer, so I took the job, and they were more business type lawyers, but they needed a trial lawyer, so I got jumped right in, and right off the bat, I had a dump truck case where a dump truck went off the road, went through a fence, went through a parking lot, through a building, and hit my client,
Wow.
buried him in gravel.
Ugh.
And so that case was thrust on me. So all of a sudden, I never had a commercial motor vehicle case. I knew nothing about trucking. There were no trucking organizations I could have joined. And so I started studying everything I could study and everything I could read on that truck case. And the thing that was fascinating was that they hired a really good defense lawyer. I mean, because the truck lawyers are really good. I mean, that's what they do for a living. They do it day
Right.
in and day out. And they have all the resources to hire the experts. And so I found it competitive. I found it challenging. I found it exciting to go up against the best. And here I was really green. And so I was scared to death. So I studied, I read, I taught myself. And then I remember, the lawyer putting his arm around me. He was saying, young man, this case is not a good case. You need to. And I'm like, how can it be not a
Wow.
good case?
Wow.
And it turned
Wow.
out that this guy had had a seizure. And it turned out this trucking company knew that he had a seizure condition, had let him go because he had a seizure condition, couldn't get a CDL. But then they got in a pinch and they brought him back. And then they went to a doctor that would rubber stamp his CDL and put him behind the wheel, and he damn near killed my client.
Wow.
And so that was one of my very first cases. I finally got to try. I kept telling, here's the number that I need to settle this case. And I said, we're not going to take a dime less. And if we get to trial, it's going to go up, and we'll never take a dime less. And so this guy, he bullied me. He beat up on us. He hired experts. I get to the courthouse for the first day of trial, and I stand up to pick the jury. And the guy he just jumps up. Your Honor, I object. May I approach the bench? And I'm like, I just started jury selection.
Wow. This is
And
incredible.
I go up to the bench, and he goes, we're going to pay Mr. Craig the number. And he settles. And
Wow.
so I learned that, first of all, not to be, I was scared to death. But
Yeah.
the reality was, I learned that, it's just like what, you bully, you got to fight them. And so otherwise, he was looking for me to cave. I wouldn't cave. My client, luckily, wouldn't cave. And so we fought. And so I thought, man, I really loved that experience. I loved the experience of getting the client exactly what we wanted. I loved the experience of beating this guy, doing the depositions, learning this niche. And so, and going up against a high quality competitor. And so I found everything about it rewarding. The client, it was very satisfying because the client really got hurt badly. So we were able to help this guy. So that was my first truck case. And so I always had an interest, but I took every kind of case I could get because I just wanted to get into a courtroom.
Right.
And I think to be a great trucking attorney, you have to be a great trial lawyer, or you have to be good at trial work.
Yeah.
And if you don't try cases, they know it. And so you don't get to try that many trucking cases. So I started trying cases, any kind of case. The worse the case, the better. I liked it because that meant I got to go into the courtroom. And if you won a bad case, people remembered you. If you lost it, people said, well, man, that guy was crazy enough to try that case.
Yeah.
So, and so we started doing all that. But that's kind of how I got in trucking. I liked it. And then I just migrated towards that area and doing trucking.
Yeah, that's a great story. It really is. I'd love to read like a more in detailed book about that. That's putting his arm around you, trying to gaslight you and tell you, this case isn't anything, and it's like you probably had to do a lot of investigative work too to find out about this guy having the seizures and not being able to get his trucking license, and that's pretty incredible.
And that's fun. And you think, I love, to this day, I was just out this week at a truck inspection.
Yeah.
I'm out literally climbing up in the truck.
Right.
I've been doing this 40 years. I got a rapid response team. I got people who do that stuff for me.
Right.
But man, you still see stuff sometimes. You go out there and you see something that maybe someone else doesn't see, or you're familiar. It's just, I love it. And I've always been hands-on. But you're right, that the investigation part of it, of these cases, a lot of times is a lot of fun to try to put the pieces together of the puzzle.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So you said you've been practicing for about 40 years, maybe more. So looking back, what do you wish you have told your younger self? Is there something if you're looking at your younger self right now, say, look, young David, is there something, that you would want to tell him?
I think not to worry so much about what everybody else says, things.
Right.
I don't really care. I'm not out to try to impress people. I think when you first start off, you're really worried about, what people think of you and whether you're good or, and I think I probably would have earlier just said, you know what, it doesn't matter. As long as I'm doing the best job I can do, working as hard as I possibly can.
Right.
And I'm doing it for the right reason, which is to make a difference for my clients.
That's right.
But when you're young, you don't know that. And you're worried about making money. You're worried about building a reputation. And what happens is that if you do things the right way, for the right reason, I honestly believe that the good will come.
So beyond the courtroom, you've been now a podcast host and an author. How has that sort of changed the way you shape and educate your clients and the public. Like, do you like being a podcast host? And what was it like having your first book come out, Semi Truck Wreck?
Yeah. I think that for me, about 8 years ago or so, I decided to start marketing to consumers. I mean, I think if you like jury trials, you like people. I
Yep.
love my clients. I used to sign up most of my clients. And what I found, and I grew up in a family that didn't have professionals, didn't have lawyers, didn't have, doctors. We didn't know those people. And so when I became a lawyer, I realized, boy, we know a lot. I know who's good lawyers, who are bad lawyers. I mean, they gave me a law degree, my law degree in 1985. They gave me a piece of paper saying I'm a lawyer. I could practice any type of law with that piece of paper.
Right.
I could draft your will. I could handle your divorce. I could handle your criminal case. I could handle your personal injury, your truck wreck case. And so, but the reality is when you get into this, like, holy cow, that's a lot of stuff to know. And it's very hard for anybody to be good at all of that. But yet the general public doesn't really realize that. And so, and I have clients and I would educate them, talk to them, and I like my clients. And so I thought, you know what? Knowledge is power. We have it. I have it a lot now because I've been doing this for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than acting like we're all this so special, let's just share the information that I have and let people know kind of the secret sauce so that they can ask the right questions. I mean, people are scared and intimidated when they come in to meet with us.
Right.
And so, why not help them say, this is a big decision you're making. So if it's a divorce case, if it's a criminal case, if it's a truck wreck case, there's huge, it's custody battle. I mean, it's humongous consequences. And so I see so many people over the years who pick the wrong lawyer, criminals who end up getting more time or end up a worse deal than what they should get because they had the wrong attorney. A divorce, a custody case where custody goes bad or divorce assets get divided bad because they had a bad divorce lawyer. And then I've literally seen people miss millions or actually tens of millions of dollars in a horrific where a guy was paralyzed because they went the wrong path.
Right.
And so it's like, so I decided, I really enjoy just ordinary people. So why not just spend time educating? So I wrote a book. Instead of writing a book for lawyers, I wrote the first book, semi-truck wrecks, a guide for victims and their families, so that they would kind of have an understanding, well, what's the process? What should I expect when if I'm involved in a truck wreck? And they may not be in Indiana, they may not be in a state I'm in, but at least they'll know what to expect and how to go about picking an attorney that handles truck wreck cases.
Yeah, and so the title of your new book, and congratulations. I really like the cover too, by the way.
Thank you.
It's never been easier to hire the wrong attorney. It makes a strong claim. So why do you think so many people end up with the wrong lawyer?
And actually, I was afraid when I wrote it. I was like, oh man, what are lawyers going to say?
I mean, does it happen more often than you think?
Oh, I think it happens all the time. I mean, I think last year there was over 1.3 million lawyers. And so, and lawyers say, I'm a truck wreck lawyer. I'm a great attorney. Everybody's, holding out. And so it's whether television, billboards, you can't go to a sporting event. I mean, the cars are all wrapped. I mean, it's just everywhere you go. I even went to the bathroom at a bar. And over the urinal, there was an ad for a criminal defense lawyer. I thought, well, that's a pretty good spot.
Why not? Hey.
Yeah, for drunk drivers.
Captive audience, yeah.
But the reality is, just because you're a great marketer doesn't make you a great attorney.
Right.
Now, it also means, just because you're a great marketer or a great attorney doesn't necessarily make you a good marketer. And you may be a really good marketer and you may be a great attorney. But the problem is that you need to understand what you're looking for and how to go about finding them. And then you are, as the consumer, you really are in a position of power. You just need to make sure, don't feel pressured, don't feel rushed.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write this book so that people would know, okay, here's the secret. Here's how you pick, when you Google, Google may think that your SEO, they rank you up top, or maybe there's ads. There's lead generation firms that are advertising, and people don't even realize that it's not a lawyer. They think it's a lawyer when they click on the button.
Right. That's right.
And so it's
What
you're
do you think of those,
bombarded.
by the way? What's your take on that sort of new kind of advertising with like going through people and I know referrals are good, and I feel like I've seen it all, David, because we've had over 200 podcast episodes, and you know,
I think that the problem with lead generation is that they aren't always motivated to get you to the best lawyer.
okay, okay,
Now sometimes they are. Some lead generation companies, work with the great lawyers, but there's a lot of lead generation companies that if you'll pay X number of dollars, they'll use you. And so I think whether it's a billboard, whether it's a lead generation, there's questions you should ask to make sure the lawyer you're picking is not only a really capable and skilled lawyer, but also somebody who you get along with and who you like. And I don't like when somebody deceives you. If it's a lead generation company, then say you're a lead generation company. Don't act like you're Craig, Kelley, and Faultless. Don't act like you're advertising on my name to get my lead. And so I don't like people who are misleading. I don't like lawyers who mislead. I don't like lead generation companies. Just be straight. My favorite thing is like cumulative years of practice. I mean, so our firm, we have 75 years, 100 years of cumulative years. Who cares? What's
yeah,
that mean? But yet everybody says it, right?
yeah, right.
So if you could have 75 lawyers with 1 year experience, and you got 75 years of cumulative experience,
Right, that's
and
true.
do you want to hire a lawyer with 1 year?
That's
No,
true.
So the reality is I just want to cut through it and let people know what are you looking for. What should you really look for? It's not cumulative years of experience. It's not a lead generation firm that may sell me to anybody, sell my lead to anybody. You should be looking for specific lawyers that are capable of handling your case.
And so, like, what are the most common mistakes that people are making when they're hiring a lawyer?
I think that probably one of the biggest mistakes is they go with an advertiser that's a big time marketer and assume that lawyer is good at whatever it is that they're looking for. So
Okay.
if it's truck wrecks, for example, most personal injury lawyers advertise that they do truck wrecks. Well, I know some of those that are advertising have never handled a truck wreck. I know some of them that have never tried a truck wreck. I know some of them never have settled a multi-million-dollar or tens of million-dollar case.
Mm.
And so, and maybe they're going to be a great trial lawyer. Maybe they're worth experimenting with, but you should know that going into it.
Right.
And what I find is people have a tendency to click on somebody or see something, click on a number, follow, and just call. And then I think there's just so many lawyers then talk to people in such a way that they're afraid to ask questions and they're intimidated. And so they just go along with whoever it is that they're first to contact.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
encourage people to say, hey, look, especially on a catastrophic semi case, for example, you should interview at least three law firms.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I put that in my book. Here's these people reading my book. And I actually had somebody come in my office, and it was a horrible case. Their mom was killed by a semi, burned to death. And they got hold of my book. And so I didn't know that. So they show up and they said, Mr. Craig, we're not going to make a decision today because we're going to interview three law firms. And I said, well, hey, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that's what you're doing, the exact right thing. And then they started asking me questions. Well, I started, hey, wait a minute, those are my questions that are in my book.
Yeah.
And I said, out
Great.
of curiosity, where did you get your questions?
Yeah.
And they told me, we read it in your book. We read it the night after my mom was killed.
Oh my
We
gosh.
we got your book. We read it. And I said, and they go, do you want to know who the other attorneys are that we're interviewing? I said, no, I don't. I said, you're doing what you're supposed to do. If you read my book, then you know what you're looking for. So I'm assuming the lawyers you picked that you're interviewing are qualified, capable lawyers. And right off the bat, you've done so much more than what most people have done. And it felt really good, and I thought to myself, even if I didn't get the case, I
Yep.
felt really good about what I had done, which was
Right.
provide information. And at the very end, they ended up hiring me, luckily.
Yeah.
And they came back, and they at that point, and they said, the last thing they said was, when they were walking out, said they were going to interview these other lawyers. I said, well, that's great. If you have other questions, call me back. And they go, what, why, out of curiosity, why don't you want to know who the lawyers are? And I said, other than that, you're doing the right thing. I said, the key difference may be is that I really would appreciate the chance to work for you. I really would love that. I'd feel privileged.
Mm-hmm.
The other lawyers may make you feel like you should feel that you're lucky that they're your lawyer. I go, it's a very subtle difference, but I feel very fortunate that you're my client. They're going to make you feel like you should be very fortunate and feel grateful that he's your lawyer. And when they came back, they said, you're absolutely right. The lawyers had big egos. They made us feel uncomfortable, like we should sign right away. And so I think the book helps people understand that you have the power. You don't have to sign that contract. You can meet these people. I meet the whole team. I mean, you know what? I
Yeah.
have a whole team of people and I bring them all in and I'll do a Zoom if they're not available to come to my office and we'll do a Zoom. I said, look, here's all the people that's going to be working on your case. Talk to us, ask us questions, get to know us. And if you're not comfortable with us, then go down and pick somebody else. But at least you're going to know who's working on your case. And so many times they don't get that.
Yeah.
I hope they do after they read the book.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. I had another trucking attorney on my show maybe 8 months ago or so, friend of mine. You probably know him, but he said, your client only gets one chance. We cut a clip and like your client only gets one chance. So you want to get that lawyer who's a good fit for you and who's going to do the best by you. So in your experience, like what are some of the red flags that consumers can watch for when they're looking around for the right fit of legal representation?
I think, number one is if somebody makes you feel pressured.
Yeah.
They're trying to push you to sign something like immediately. I mean, you have to move fast in truck cases because of this violation of evidence. But if they're pressuring you to sign and they're not explaining it, if they can't tell you a similar case that they've handled, and they start beating around the bush and you ask them, well, have you ever handled a multi-million-dollar case? Have you ever tried a trucking case? If they can't answer those questions or they beat around the bush, then I would be worried. If you go into their offices and you see the signs are faded, the furniture's old. I mean, these cases cost hundreds of thousands of dollars on the huge cases. And so I would be worried if this law firm doesn't have the resources to keep their office up. It's a small thing. But I would say, hey, wait a minute, the names aren't changed, it's faded, the furniture's old. Does this firm have the resources that they're really going to invest in my case in the very beginning?
Right.
I would look, for me and for red flag for trucking is that I believe you should be a board certified attorney. ABA approves board certification. Board certified, it's hard to become board certified. And that's true in criminal, divorce, estate planning. There's board certification that you can get in any of those niches, any of those specialties. And so if they're not board certified, to me, that would be a red flag. So if I'm looking for a divorce lawyer and that lawyer's not board certified, then that's a red flag. If I'm looking for a truck accident attorney and they're not board certified in truck accident law, then to me, that's a red flag. If they act like it's just about them, then I have a problem with them. There's some attorneys that will parade their clients in. And the question you always have to ask yourself, why is that? Is that good for the client or is that good for the lawyer to get the next case? And so I would always be looking for somebody who has the client, who's client-centered, and they were focusing on the client. And if I felt like it was all about them, then that to me would be a red flag. If they came in and they didn't speak, teach, write, I speak at seminars, I write, I host Indiana trucking, and so that to me is a red flag if they don't do any of that. And then the last thing, I guess, if they don't have a team behind them, I had somebody on a truck wreck down in Kentucky, and they wanted to hire me, and they said, Mr. Craig, we want to make sure it's just you, because we don't want to get it handed off somewhere.
Right.
I go, well, the problem with that is that would be a really big mistake, because I am really bad at research. I am really bad at drafting documents. And if you hired me to do all that stuff, you would lose. But fortunately for you, you're not going to have me do any of that stuff. And my team, I'll introduce you to the people who I have that, graduated second in their class from law school, that are really sharp, that are good researchers, good writers. They'll keep your case going and do the briefs. So
Right.
I think if they don't introduce you to a team and they act like it's just all about, I'm the lawyer, I'm the guy in the commercial, I'm the one standing on the truck, so
Right.
I'm the one you want to hire, then I'd think that's a problem because you need a team behind you, not one person.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And like, so when a client is in a vulnerable situation, they've just gone through this dramatic, super dramatic occurrence. Like, how can one of this potential client like evaluate their potential, their lawyer's competence? Like, what's the best way to do that?
That's a great question.
I
I
mean, I
think
know we talked about interviewing three firms, but I mean, how do you actually know? I mean, lawyers are very like, I can do this, I'll do this, but how do we know?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think first of all, the people who are affected by the wreck, if it's a truck accident, for example, they oftentimes are not in a good position because they're grieving the loss of a loved one.
Mhm.
They're in the hospital taking care of a survivor. And so they've got other things on their mind other than preserving evidence or hiring the right lawyer.
Right.
First thing I always tell people is that you need to designate somebody in your family or a friend or somebody you trust to help you make that decision. And just hand that off to somebody and that can actually that's not emotionally who's distraught and
Yeah.
depressed, and hand it off to somebody you trust to do the research. And then, quite frankly, it's not that hard. You can look at Google reviews, you can look at board certification, you can look at awards, you can look at, you look at, and it's just like it's not never been easier to pick the wrong attorney. It's never been easier to pick the right attorney if you do the research. And with the internet now, you can find out a lot about people. And so, but you're right. When you're distraught, when you're depressed, when you're spending your nights and days in the hospital, you're not in a good position to make that decision. But hand it off to somebody who you trust, another family member, a child, a spouse, a parent, to make that decision and do the research.
Okay. Fair. That's fair enough. So, why do you think our legal profession struggles with the public trust, and what can we as attorneys do to change that?
I think unfortunately, I honestly believe most lawyers are really good, honest, hardworking folks.
Yeah, great.
Just like I do truck drivers. I mean, I think truck drivers are the same way.
Sure.
But the bad ones are the ones that get all the attention. When a lawyer embezzles a bunch of money or hurts a client,
Mm,
those are the ones that we hear
that's
about.
true. That's true.
And so you don't hear about the ones that are out, helping these folks and helping take care of their families and getting recoveries for them. And I think so. I think that's a big part of it. I think sometimes the advertising aspect of it, doesn't set well with some people. The way some lawyers advertise. I mean, again, wheeling somebody in, it's in a wheelchair and to having a press conference, there's times for that. If there's something dangerous that you want to warn the public about, but if you're just doing it to say I've got this case, to me again, if it's about you, it's probably not good, and I
Mhm.
think that hurts our image. I my clients again in a catastrophic case, there's a lot of lawyers out there who run commercials with jumping up and down on semis or those type of things.
Yeah.
Most of my clients are offended by that. I mean, if your
Yeah.
mom just got killed
Right.
by a semi, yeah, I mean, seriously, is that something that appeals to you?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think that's the
Yeah.
last thing. I mean, so I don't think they want to make light of stuff. And so, but again, that doesn't make them bad lawyers. It just that marketing doesn't necessarily appeal to somebody who's had a tragic situation, in my opinion. So, but so I think, I think most of us are really good attorneys. I think most people are really trying hard. I think most people go into it for the right reason.
Yep.
And so, but it's hard to get out there. And I think the insurance industry, the trucking industry, they have a ulterior motive to make us look bad, make us look greedy,
Hmm.
because therefore, they can impact our juries by, by publicizing all that stuff, by talking about tort reform, by making it sound like they're making and protecting the people. So I think we could all do a better job of working on our image and combating that, that messaging.
That's great. So much info, and so just a reminder, we're talking here about your new book. It's never been easier to hire the wrong attorney. So walk us through like a real life example, obviously not naming names, but like of a time that maybe you witnessed somebody hire the wrong attorney, and maybe they came to you and said, "Hey, I'm getting rid of this attorney. He hasn't called me back. He hasn't communicated. He hasn't done X, Y, and Z. Will you take my case, Mr. Craig?"
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them that come to mind. I mean, one case that comes to mind is we had a lady who they called a bunch of attorneys. In this case, no attorney would take the case, and so the message to her was, your daughter got killed by a semi, and the police report was against her. It was a snow and ice case, and her daughter lost control switching lanes and got hit in the as she lost control, she spun in front of a semi killed her. And so by listening to the wrong lawyers, I mean, there were like 7 or 8 of them who all told her that she had no case. And so if she had stopped there, then
Wow.
her daughter's kids would have never had a recovery. And so, and she was a single mom, 2 little kids. And so somebody told her, you need to call David Craig. And so she called my office. I'm embarrassed to say that one of my attorneys also turned the case down.
Okay.
And so the attorney listened to it. One of my attorneys, somebody who I trained, listened to the case, listened to the facts, and turned the case down.
Hmm.
And it is right. I mean, the police report was, again, there was no eyewitnesses. The lady died, so she wasn't going to be able to tell her story. So I get it. And so, but then this person went back to this person who happened to know me, who was a former client. And they said, no, you didn't talk to David. So call back.
Oh,
So she called
wow.
back and she
Wow.
got through to me. And I said, well, I don't know if I can help you, but I will try. I will at least find out what happened that day. And it turns out, I was able to find another witness. I was able to show that this truck was going too fast for the snow conditions. So under the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, it says that if you have trouble with traction, you should use extreme caution. And then under the CDL manual says that if you're driving on packed snow, that you should decrease your speed by 50%. And yet I found out this truck was passing people.
Hmm.
And so what was this truck doing in the left lane, passing people? So when my client, a pickup truck came off of an exit ramp, she had to move over. And as they were all going well under the speed limit in the right lane. But as she moves over, she loses control and spins, but this semi's flying by people. And so we were able to make a case. I was able to help that family. And so it was all that family. We took care of those
Wow.
kids. But that's an example of the wrong lawyers. Not only would have hurt her not in the amount, but she would have got nothing.
How do you know when this is kind of off subject, but like, how do you know if the truck was going so fast, like the way that the impact was, or?
Yeah, so normally, and so in that case, what I had was, luckily I found a witness, and I'll remember to this day. I mean, I found a witness, and the witness, and that witness said this truck was passing us, and and they knew how fast they were going.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I wasn't hired. If I'd been hired quicker, I could have downloaded the ECM, the electronic control module.
Wow.
Every
Okay.
semi has a computer in it, and so I would have known
Okay.
exactly how fast when it braked. But because this case was almost 2 years old, by the time she got around to hiring people, she was distraught. All these lawyers turned the case down, and so there was no download for me to do. I had another case where a guy burnt to death. He runs into the back of a semi at night, and he's driving a box truck. And the police report said it was his fault for failure to yield, falling too closely. And the folks lived out in the East Coast, and they called me and they said, I know, it was their dad and husband, said, the mom said, the wife said, I know my husband, he's a very careful driver. There's no way he was driving too close to somebody. The daughter's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And so, and in that case, I got hired quickly, and I was able to I ended up finding out that truck had stopped because there had been a prior accident. I said the whole interstate was shut down. This truck was sitting there, and this guy decides, they're standing there for like 45 minutes to an hour. He decides to shut his truck down, go back into the cab, and wait till the road opens up. Well, the road opens up while he's still back in the damn sleeper berth, and his lights are off, and all the traffic's gone. And he run, and my client unfortunately didn't even see the truck because it's dark.
Oh.
It's in the, and he is the back. Now we were hired quickly, so I was able to, put the evidence together and help these clients recover. And they were absolutely right. The man did nothing wrong. I could check by the speed of his car, the download on his car. I was able to get police video when they ran their cars to the scene. They had a dash cam. I was able to show that there wasn't any traffic. So I was like, wait a minute, if the roads, traffic stopped, where is everybody?
Right.
By doing an inspection of the truck, I was able to find, the taillights, different things were, out. So we were hired quickly. So again, if you hire the right attorney, they, just like what you said in the beginning, it's like an investigation. It's like a puzzle.
Right.
And so if you but you got to hire the right people who have the experience and have the money to hire the right experts.
Right.
To put that puzzle together.
Right.
In those two cases, both those clients would have gotten no recovery at all had they not gone with the right law firm.
So tell me again about, I know we touched on like marketing online and that sort of thing. Like, how do you think it's made it harder and not easier for people to find a good lawyer?
I think you're so bombarded with marketing, whether it's commercials, whether it's billboards, whether it's radio, whether it's car wraps, whether it's internet ads, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, you name it. They're pushing out geofencing. I just saw something the other day where somebody's geofencing hospitals, geofencing, all these things so that they can push their ads to the hospital, the people in the hospital.
Wow.
And so it's like, and so marketing has gotten very sophisticated. And so the people are getting better at pushing out their messaging. The problem is not all those people are qualified to handle every type of case. And so I think that's the biggest problem, is that people are bombarded and they don't know what to look for. Most people would never, they know board certified surgeons.
Yep.
They've heard of that. Okay, if I'm going to have a surgery, I'm not going to go to my general practitioner.
Right.
I'm going to go to a surgeon. But the reality is most people don't know that there's board certified lawyers, that they're ABA, they're tested. You have to have a certain number of years experience. You have to have judges, lawyers vouch for you, and then you have to go pass a test on your knowledge. And then you have to, then you have to get reaffirmed later. Or recertified. So I think it's just, you're bombarded with so much stuff, which I'm for advertising. I think it's good, but I think that, what I hope with this book is that I educate people on how to sort through the good versus the bad.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I know we're talking about, it's never been easy to hire the wrong attorney. So like, what advice do you give somebody who they're like, oh no, I think I have the wrong person? Like, say they're starting to do discovery, they're starting to go through the process, maybe they've done a deposition, but they're not liking the communication, or they're not liking the vibe, so to speak. They're not really liking how the attorney's speaking to them. And, like you said earlier, I love that you said it's like a pleasure and a privilege to work for the client, not the other way around. It's not like the privilege is not on the lawyer, the person to have this X person as their lawyer. So what advice can you give somebody who figures out that they've hired the wrong attorney?
Yeah, I get that a lot. I just actually had a client who just hires a serious truck wreck down in another state. It was this one was in Kentucky. And so the first thing they called me and said, I listened to your podcast. I've now read your books. And I'd like to hire you. And I said, well, you have an attorney? Yes.
Right.
I did have an attorney. And I'm like, well, first thing you need to do is call your lawyer and tell them that you're so unhappy that you called David Craig, that you're so unhappy that you're calling another law firm, because that firm at that point, you would hope that in a good case, they're going to bend over backwards to make you happy. If they don't, you have that absolute right. You can terminate your services. You can go pick a different lawyer. I can't tell you whether I'll take the case or not because I don't know enough about your case.
What if the attorney has already invested money in experts and all that other stuff? And
if they have, then they're entitled to be reimbursed. They're entitled to be reimbursed for their time. Okay. That should come out of the lawyer who takes the case, not the client's pocket. So it comes out of the lawyers who take the case. Unfortunately, a lot of the cases where you see people switch There's been nothing done in the case. There's no hardly any expenses have been invested. Unfortunately, they've missed some opportunities to invest money.
Yeah.
And in this case, the reason was they were trying to force the client to take what the client felt like was a bad settlement. And so, but then I called the lawyers up and said, hey, look, what's going on with this case? And they're like, no, you do us a favor if you take it because we can't get along with the client, the guy. And, I said, well, we'll protect your, the amount of money you're lien and those type of things. But
Yep.
clients have an absolute right to pick a lawyer, and they have an absolute right to go get a second opinion. A lawyer doesn't have a right to go solicit business from somebody who's already got an attorney. And you can't commit. I mean, the hard part is if they call me, I say, here's what you should be looking for, but I can't promise you whether I take your case or not. And I always try to encourage people to go back and talk to the lawyer.
Sure. So what do you hope readers take away from the book? It's never been easier to hire the wrong attorney. What do you think somebody reads the book, somebody who's maybe dealing with a legal matter, what do you hope that they take away?
I hope they'll take away that they're in the driver's seat, that they can make the right decision, that they shouldn't feel rushed or pressured, that it kind of takes there's the curtain away so they can see what's behind the curtain, and they can ask the right questions, they can look for the right attorneys, and they can find, especially one of my points is that, if it's a serious wrongful death case or a serious catastrophic injury case, it's going to take years. Do you want to spend years with this person or not? Do you feel comfortable with her or him? And if you don't, then go to the next lawyer.
Right.
And I think that, and then also just look to see if they've been if they ever had malpractice claims, those type of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love that point. It's an ongoing relationship. This could take years, this case. I mean, you want somebody that you feel comfortable with, that you could call, that you think is going to get back to you, like if you email them or whatnot.
Yeah. How do you communicate? I talk to people, I said, you've always heard the expression, treat people the way you want to be treated. But I look at it and say, I tell my office to treat the clients the way they want to be treated. Everybody's different. Some people love communication, like weekly. Some like text. Some people like Zooms. Some people like in person.
Right.
And whatever it is, find out from the very beginning. How does a client want us to communicate with them? How often do they want us to communicate with them? And then don't cookie cutter it. Provide the services that they want. I have a social worker in my office. She has a social work degree, and she's great at listening. She's great at helping people find benefits and support groups and those type of things. It's not an income producing position, but it's a position that can help people. And I think that's I have
amazing.
A psychology major who does my intakes. I mean,
that's great.
I think you invest in you want people who care about people, who want to make a difference in their lives, and that's my goal. I mean, make a difference in my clients' lives, but also make a difference in my employees' lives. And employees really are a lot happier. I mean, I've got 10 attorneys here, and they were like all but one were like law clerks of mine. They all came up from law school. They've been with me now 20, 30 years.
Wow.
And so, but it's not because of money. It's because we're excited every day to get up and come in and make a difference in the lives of these people.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And so that's, to me, is extraordinarily important.
Well, you must be good to work for too. If you have people who've been there for 20, 30 years, that's incredible. That's great.
Either that, or I have good snacks.
Snacks are
important. Monday, I have a lady who cooks breakfast for my office on Monday mornings, and Thursdays she cooks lunch.
Great.
You can bring your dogs. You don't have to dress up. We're not a fancy law firm.
I love that.
We just treat people the way we'd want to, we personally would want to be treated. And, and I think that's, there's a lot of stress to what we do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress in law, but you can make it so it's enjoyable, and you can make it so that you like each other. I mean, I just had 22 other kids in my office this past week.
Okay.
We have a kids club. And so we had 22 kids.
That's amazing.
So people bring their kids, their grandkids.
Yep.
And we were hanging out there coloring truck pictures.
That's great.
And and having ice cream. And I just, you know what? We're very privileged and fortunate to be able to do what we do. And so, you know what? Enjoy it and enjoy it and make a difference.
That's amazing. So So tell us, like, what made you feel, like, was there a particular case or moment that you feel like you wanted to write a book like this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was accumulative over time. When you start seeing people get to the wrong lawyer. I mean, when somebody I know calls me and says, "I have a business dispute. Who should I hire?" I know who to hire. Or they call me and my friends call and say, "Unfortunately, they're going through a divorce. Who should they hire?" I can tell them. But I also see what happens when people have picked the wrong ones, and it's heartbreaking. It really is. If you care about people,
Yeah.
it's like, no, pick the right attorneys. The system is designed to work, especially in the trucking area, the truck wreck area. The defense has got such great lawyers, great resources, great experts that you need a top-notch truck wreck lawyer to defend you. And so that was kind of what prompted it. Plus, I really like communicating just to ordinary people. And that's what both my books are, just geared towards the average person. And my podcast, again, it's weird because it's not geared towards lawyers. I mean, lawyers do so much. They write books for lawyers. They do podcasts for lawyers. My podcast is for the average everyday person. And I can say, hey, look, they're saying, well, I'm looking for a lawyer. I say, okay, great. Look, here's my rapid response team. Look at episode 42. Here's reconstructions I'm going to hire. Look at episode 3. If you want to see your team, you can watch them. I'll interview them. They're going to be on the podcast, and you're going to get to know everybody that's going to work on your case.
That's awesome.
And people love that, and they talk in terms that they understand the black box, the ECM, the downloads, the brakes, the mechanics. They talk, and so they can learn information that whether they hire me or they don't hire me, they're going to have knowledge. And like I said in the very beginning, knowledge is power. And if I can give the average ordinary person power, then I've done my job.
That's amazing. So with all your years of experience and your awards and now your new book, like, what do you see as your broader mission with helping clients? And, I think that the book helps clients and helping the legal profession.
I think that will continue to do that. I think the more helpful you are to your clients, the consumer, the more they appreciate it. I've got young lawyers here who I'm extraordinarily proud of. I think last year, every one of my lawyers was recognized as super lawyers. And my son's a lawyer here. My daughter's a lawyer here.
Wow.
And so, it's really, and I send them off to all the best trial schools, all the best seminars all over the country. And I really love the fact, and since they were all law clerks of mine, I know what motivates them. And what motivates the ones I kept, are the ones who care and who want to make a difference. And they're the ones that they're willing to go to the seminars. I'm speaking next week at a trucking seminar, and I've got my paralegals going with me. My paralegals are going, they go to every year, whether I speak or not, because I want my paralegals to go to learn about trucking.
Yeah.
And so I invest in people because that provides a higher quality service to my clients, and my people feel better about it.
Yeah.
So I think I think the future is continuing to build a firm that's client-centric, that really cares about clients and making sure you hire the right people that do all that.
That's incredible. So, David Craig, author of It's Never Been Easier to Hire the Wrong Attorney. Was there anything else we left out today that you wanted to make sure to get across to the audience?
No, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and talk about my book.
Yeah, congratulations on such an incredible career so far. And the book sounds awesome. Maybe I can get my hands on an autographed copy sometimes. I'd love that. But
we'll figure that. We'll get that to you.
That's great. Thanks for coming on. Stay right there, David. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.